the winner of MasterChef. Congratulations. Christine.
Christine Howe was declared the Season 3 champion of MasterChef America. Despite being visually impaired chef with Vietnamese heritage, Christine Howe has triumphed over challenges and adversity to achieve remarkable success. She writes cookbooks, travels, opens restaurants, and inspires thousands.
Điều mà làm tôi cảm thấy được truyền cảm hứng nhất là chị ấy nhớ đến hương vị của mẹ.
Lắng nghe câu chuyện của chị ấy, biết chị là người có nghị lực vươn lên và thành công. Điều này cho tôi nguồn động lực để cố gắng hơn trong tương lai.
For me, comfort food could be anything like pho or bún bò Huế or thịt kho, things that my mom would cook a lot. I'm here to tell my story as someone who is born of Vietnamese parents, has the Vietnamese heritage.
When the winner of US MasterChef Season 3 and cookbook author Christine Howe lost her eyesight to a rare disease, she thought her life was over. But it turns out it was just the beginning. She's the first ever blind contestant to ever audition for such a wildly popular cooking show and received the trophy. So let's meet our guest today, Christine Howe, to hear more about her inspiring journey of becoming a MasterChef and her passion in telling about Vietnamese food stories to the world from her parents' culinary heritage. So, hello, Christine, and thank you so much for joining us on Talk Vietnam today.
Thank you for having me here today.
So, our first question is, what brought you back to Vietnam this time?
This time, I'm fortunate to be doing work with the United States Embassy to come here as a culinary envoy as part of a diplomacy tour. So, coming here to not only share about my American background as a chef in the U.S., but also to learn a lot more about the Vietnamese culture and the Vietnamese food that I grew up eating.
Mm-hmm. I guess we have to talk about, your journey in MasterChef Season 3. Mm-hmm. I believe that, the feelings when you were in the finale night, it's still vivid in your mind. So can you give us like a depiction of how you felt during that night?
The finale night, I remember I was very nervous. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew that now I had a 50-50 chance of winning. And finally, when my name was announced as the winner, I think it was a huge shock. I think it took me 36 hours before it really sunk in, but really my biggest feeling was a sense of relief that the competition was finally over and I would get to go home finally.
Wow, you have no inkling of that, that you might win?
No, I had no idea. I every day I expected it would be my last day there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my mentality is often to hope for the best, but expect the worst. So didn't know what would happen and just prepared myself that this might be the last day I would be in the competition.
For the Vietnamese audience who might not know, about the show, what did you cook, for your last assignment?
The last one we were tasked for the finale to cook a 3-course meal, and I wanted to highlight my Southeast Asian background as someone who grew up as a Vietnamese American. The first dish I did was actually a different version of gỏi. And then my second one was a tribute to my mom. My second course was thịt kho.
Yeah.
And then my third one was a coconut lime sorbet. So using the flavors of Vietnam, like coconut and lime, and making it into an ice cream.
Mm-hmm. And so what did you pitch to the judges as you present these dishes to them?
I told the judges that I know that they have eaten the best foods in the world, so I'm not here to impress them necessarily with what they may think is the best bite they've ever had, but I'm here to tell my story as someone who is born of Vietnamese parents, has the Vietnamese heritage, and so I wanted to show them that these are the flavors and the types of ingredients I grew up eating, and this is my story on a plate. So also telling them that because I lost my mom when I was young, and thịt kho is a dish that reminds me a lot of my mom because it was probably the most eaten dish that I had growing up in my mom's kitchen, and I wanted to pay tribute to her by cooking the thịt kho and sharing it with the judges.
Mm-hmm. It has been 11 years since then, and so how has your journey spanned out?
I never really expected my life to turn out the way it did. It opened up a lot of opportunities. I was able to travel overseas to many different countries to do culinary things, and I got to write a cookbook, which was really enjoyable because I have a background in writing, and do a lot of public speaking and advocacy work, which I think is really the most rewarding part about being able to be given this platform, is to speak for those who also have vision impairment or disabilities, or women, or in America as a Vietnamese American chef. And then, of course, to be able to open restaurants. I would have never imagined that these are the possibilities in my life.
And let's take you back, to when you were a child. So how did your passion for cooking ignite?
To be honest, growing up as a child, I was not into food at all. I was actually told that I was a very picky eater, and I remember many hours of sitting at the table, and my mom would, ép ăn, but I just didn't want to eat. I just ham chơi. So I would cry at the table, and mealtime would last for an hour or 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got older, thinking back, that I appreciated the hard work that my mom put into putting food on the table every day, even though she was also had a full-time job. And then thinking back to the dishes that she cooked that I really loved, like thịt kho.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was a young adult, having lost my mom already, she died of cancer, and thinking about the flavors of the dishes she used to cook made me really miss her food. So it wasn't until then that I decided I wanted to teach myself to cook and try to recreate a lot of the dishes that she used to cook. And it was a way for me to still think about my mom and keep her spirit alive in the kitchen. So that was what ignited my joy for cooking, and it wasn't until later in life when I realized that there is something really special and caring about being able to cook food and sharing it with other people.
Right. But your, culinary journey has not been easy either. You ignite that passion, but then around like when you're 19, 20s was when you first start to figure out that you have an autoimmune disease that, gradually makes your eyesight just, it's just gone darker. And so how did you find the inspiration in yourself to overcome all of that challenges and embark on a journey, such inspiring as is it now?
It was definitely difficult. I wouldn't say that I was always optimistic or always hopeful. Some days were easier than others, but there were many days when I would wake up and not really know how would I survive and how am I going to live independently, having lost my vision. But I think as time passed, I started to realize that no matter what, the world would keep on moving forward. My friends would still live their lives, so I knew that I could either figure it out and try to find a new purpose in life and decide what I wanted for my life, or I could give up. And I refused to give up because I think I just got that sort of determination from my parents. And that's when I realized, okay, I just have to figure out how I'm going to live independently with my vision loss. And that's when I decided I need to teach myself again how to cook with less and less sight.
Christine Ha, whose Vietnamese name is Hà Huyền Trân, was born in 1979 to Vietnamese parents. She began experiencing visual impairment in 1999 and became almost completely blind in 2007 due to a rare condition called Neuromyelitis Optica, a central nervous system disorder. However, this did not diminish Christine Ha's passion for cooking. Christine became the first visually impaired contestant on the American MasterChef when she took part in this popular reality show's third season in 2012. Few believed that Christine could make it far in the competition, which was known to be full of challenges and obstacles, but she overcame them all. Another notable aspect is her unwavering dedication to infusing the flavors of Vietnamese cuisine into her dishes, for which she received much praise, surpassing many competitors to appear in the grand finale. Christine showcased her version of thịt kho, a traditional Vietnamese braised meat delicacy. The judging panel highly acclaimed the dish, earning her the MasterChef US Season 3 winner title in 2012.
Christine!
As someone who used to have sight, do you think it impacted your mentality, a lot more once that light is like gradually losing?
That's a good question. I think in some ways I'm thankful that I have memories from when I used to be able to see because I can remember colors and I remember how certain things look. But in some ways, I've talked to other people who are visually impaired and they don't understand. They think it might be harder to lose your vision because they don't know what they're missing, I guess. But I feel like I'm fortunate to have been able to see things in my life. But sometimes people ask me, would you want to get your vision back if you could? And I always say that yes, I would for 24 hours just to see what all of my friends and my family look like now and what cars look like now and who certain actors or singers look like now that have come on the scene after I've lost my vision.
Right.
But I think I'm so used to living my life without vision now that it would be really strange for me to suddenly get it back and have to drive again and be much more independent walking through the streets.
So you used to say that cooking is a way for you to connect with your family, specifically your mom, to honor her memory. So can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, growing up, I ate so much Vietnamese food, and I remember because I was born in the States, I felt like I was having to straddle two different cultures all the time. Like when I was at home, I was only allowed to speak Vietnamese. We only ate Vietnamese food. Once in a while, my parents would buy American food.
Right.
But I never felt like I was Vietnamese enough at home. And then I would go to school, and my mom would pack me lunches with like chả giò or thịt kho, things with nước mắm that don't smell really good. And so I was always embarrassed and trying to trade my food for my friends or my classmates' lunches. They had like sandwiches, peanut butter jelly sandwiches, and no one would want my food. And so at school, I always felt like I was never American enough. So I think that was the difficulty in trying to reconcile the two different cultures that I straddled. So that was a struggle growing up, is to figure out my identity. And it wasn't until years later as an adult looking back, I realized I can be both Vietnamese and American, and the intersection of both of those things is who I am.
So you lost your mom when you were only 14 years old. So which one is the bigger challenge? You remembering your mother's recipe or cooking without eyesight?
Oh, they're both very difficult challenges in their own way. I think cooking without sight is the bigger physical challenge, but I think the emotional challenge is trying to recreate my mom's recipes, because I feel like a lot of the dishes, no matter what, it still doesn't turn out exactly like mom's.
Right. At what age did you decide that it's going to be your mission to recreate your mom's recipe?
I decided that pretty early on when I began cooking, so around age 19 or 20.
Wow.
As soon as I started learning to cook and teaching myself to cook, I bought Vietnamese cookbooks and tried to look for the dishes that I remembered eating. And it was something I knew I immediately wanted to, over my lifetime, learn to cook all of the dishes that I used to eat growing up.
But around the same time, you start to lose your eyesight, so it's become like a kind of like a double struggle.
Yes, that's right. I would say about 1 year after I started teaching myself how to cook was when I started experiencing the vision loss in one of my eyes, and gradually throughout my 20s it affected both of my eyes.
Wow. Can you tell me about how do you use your senses to cook?
Scientifically, they say when you lose your vision, your visual cortex in your brain starts reconnecting to your fingertips instead of to your eyes. So that's how someone who's blind learns to read Braille. So feeling with our hands is how we now begin to shape images in our head. So my sense of touch is actually probably the sense I use most in the kitchen. So how I know how small the vegetables are that I'm cutting, I will feel it. I can feel the textures of different foods and know what stage of cooking it's at. For me, I had no choice, but if you forced yourself to cut out your sense of sight, you can still very much cook in the kitchen successfully by leaning on your other four senses.
Are you curious about how Christine Ha cooks? She prepares everything and organizes the kitchen meticulously to know by heart where to locate the cooking utensils and ingredients. she attentively uses her ears to hear the sound of boiling water or frying onions and garlics. Then she uses her taste buds to taste all the spices and her sense of smell to make out each aroma. With her acute remaining senses, Christine Ha can sharpen her culinary skills, but her attentiveness and love always make Christine's dishes the most delicious they could be.
You've judged on MasterChef Season 3 2015 in Vietnam. So do you have any memorable experience or any memorable stories from that?
There's a lot. The experience of being on MasterChef Vietnam is so different from being in the MasterChef US, and also being a contestant versus being a judge. It's a lot easier to be a judge. But in some ways it's still difficult because you're tasting so many foods and you're trying to decide which one is the best dish that you've tasted. But I felt like I also learned a lot. Being a judge on MasterChef Vietnam is I got to try so many ingredients I've never worked with before, try new dishes, and just really learn about the contestants' stories here in Vietnam and why they love to cook. But I also enjoyed learning about the similarity because even though I was on the US competition and the contestants in the US are still like the contestants in Vietnam in that we all love to cook and we all enjoy food.
You certainly has inspired a lot of people with your recipes in your cookbook. And so your first cookbook called Recipe from My Home Kitchen, Asian American Comfort Food, which became a New York bestseller. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So what is special about this book?
This book encompasses all sorts of comfort food that I grew up eating. So as I mentioned, being Vietnamese, but having been born and grown up in the US, like comfort food to me is food that reminds me of childhood, and that could mean so many things. So in the book, I included recipes like phở gà or thịt kho, but I also included American comfort foods like baked pasta, and then other international foods that are comforting like South Asian food and things that are more curry forward. So for me, it was about sharing different dishes of different cuisines, but all invoke memories for a lot of people. And then I wanted to include recipes that were simple for the beginning home cook, but also some that were slightly more advanced for people who are looking for something more intermediate level of cooking. So I wanted a cookbook that is more accessible for the everyday home cook, that, you know, with recipes where someone who's busy can still come home and prepare dinner for their family that is not very complicated and doesn't take a ton of time.
What is your goal when writing this book, you know, when it comes to like having people learn more about Vietnamese, you know, recipes and culinaries and, you know, ingredients in food?
I include little notes about different Vietnamese ingredients that perhaps someone who didn't grow up eating Vietnamese food would maybe not know. So I wanted to teach people about nước mắm or different spices or Vietnamese herbs, or perhaps if they live in a town in America where they're not near a Vietnamese grocery store, like what they might be able to substitute. But for me, I think it was kind of a beginner's guide to some Vietnamese flavors, and so that's what I wanted to achieve with that cookbook.
Christine Ha has visited Vietnam several times for inspiration for her amazing dishes. But it was in 2023 that she returned to Hanoi with her husband for the second time. The first time Christine was in the capital was during TED, so she could not find any open restaurants. Therefore, on this trip, she and her husband are determined to try many delicious dishes here. After a long trip from the US to Vietnam, Christine Ha and her husband immediately tried phở roll.
This looks very mountainous. The fried things look, there's way more of the fried part. Here, I'm gonna put the crunchy thing. And then on top is like sauteed greens and meat and that you can eat together.
Okay.
Try that. Look at that.
Do you think it's really hot still?
I don't know.
Oh, it's hot. I'm
hot?
scared, yeah. I don't want to burn my mouth. It's good. It's simple, but that noodle's definitely different.
It looks
But the
soft
toppings
inside.
are simple.
Okay, after dinner, we're gonna get some dessert at Gamsoy.
Which means sticky rice ice cream.
For Christine, this is a delicious dish that captures a harmonious balance of flavors, including sour, spicy, salty, and sweet. Vietnamese cuisine embraces all of those elements and is balanced with fresh ingredients. That is why Vietnamese cuisine is an endless source of inspiration for the Vietnamese-American chef Christine Ha.
Talking about like Vietnamese food that you have created, you have opened 3 restaurants in Houston, Texas, where you're from. And how was your experience opening, the restaurants in the place with such a large community of Vietnamese people?
I knew from the beginning that I don't want to open a pho shop, for example, because Houston has so many great, what they call mom and pop shops that do pho or do bánh cuốn or something very niche and it's very authentic to what how you would find Vietnamese food here. And I'm a different generation of Vietnamese American. So I was born in the US. So I will take Vietnamese ingredients or Vietnamese flavors, but also mix in some of my Texas upbringing or my American upbringing and add that into the Vietnamese food and kind of have the cuisine evolve and show that this is me on a plate. Like I'm both Vietnamese and American, and so these are the dishes that I'm creating on my modern Vietnamese menu.
At the age of, I would say, at the age of 40, after 7 years, you managed to open your restaurants. How does it make you feel finally achieving that dream?
It feels great. I think to be able to create something and build something from the ground up. Sometimes I stand in my restaurant and just listen to everything going on around me, smell the dishes coming out. And I think, wow, a year ago, this wasn't here. This was like an empty building. And now there's people coming in eating. There's people working here. That is an amazing feeling to be able to create something from nothing.
So more and more Vietnamese dishes are being introduced into the U.S. It's not just pho and bánh mì anymore. So what do you think about that wave of newer dishes are coming in and more people in the U.S. are starting to know more of the Vietnamese dishes?
I think it's great. I think people should always expand their palates, and I think the key to compassion in this world is learning about other cultures and regions through the food. So the fact that now almost everyone knows what bánh mì is and pho, but now people are starting to know bánh cuốn or chả cá or bánh xèo. I think that's fascinating. Is now I'm hearing more and more native English speakers order these things on a menu, and for me, it makes me happy that people are warming up and wanting to eat more and more Vietnamese dishes and discover more about the Vietnamese culture and cuisine.
So in terms of palates, do you think what is it that makes Vietnamese food stand out compared to other cuisines? What's the trademark here?
I think Vietnamese dishes tend to be very vibrant and use a lot of fresh herbs. It doesn't feel heavy oftentimes when you eat it. And of course, there are very distinctive Vietnamese ingredients like fish sauce, nước mắm, the different spices, and of course the abundance of Vietnamese herbs and vegetables. These are the things that I think are very unique to Vietnamese cuisine.
My life story is one about overcoming challenges, and I think people look to me to see how I was able to overcome losing my vision, to being able to cook and have a career and have successful restaurants and be an owner of restaurants. So I think it's important to empower, especially the next generation, to feel like they have the same strength to be able to achieve what they would like to do as well.
Those were the emotional words shared by Christine Ha at Reach Institute. The exchange program between Reach Institute and the U.S. Embassy in Vietnam brought together the renowned chef Christine Ha and disadvantaged students studying at Reach as part of their efforts to support vocational education. It aims to help young people discover their talents and maximize their potential in their careers and lives. The event draws a significant interest from numerous disadvantaged students seeking access to formal education opportunities. The students also saw firsthand American MasterChef Christine Ha's cooking skills when she demonstrated her take on the Korean dish dak dory tang.
Dù là người khiếm thị, nhưng chị Hà đã nấu món gà hầm hôm nay rất là ngon. Hôm nay được lắng nghe câu chuyện của chị ấy, biết chị là người có nghị lực vươn lên và thành công. Điều này cho tôi nguồn động lực để cố gắng hơn trong tương lai.
Tôi nhìn thấy chị Hà trên TV và nhìn thấy chị đi thi. Nhưng mà hôm nay thì rất là vui khi đã nhìn thấy trực tiếp và được gặp chị và được thưởng thức món ăn của chị luôn, nên là tôi rất là vui và thấy rất là hạnh phúc luôn.
For Christine Ha, disability is not the biggest obstacle to becoming a talented chef. It has instead motivated her to prove that visually impaired people can also cook and create international acclaimed dishes.
So let's mention about your TED Talks. Your TED Talks talks about harnessing the power of otherness to strengthen everything that you do in your life. So how can you define otherness?
For me, I think celebrating otherness in people is what makes life really interesting and makes our world very rich. So meeting someone who is not like me and learning about what things they love, what do they care about, what do they eat, what do they think about on a daily basis, that makes me learn more about other people. And I think when you learn about people's otherness, essentially you realize people are all really the same as human beings. Like, even though we have all these different priorities, these different backgrounds, in the end, we're all still human beings. And I realize that all human beings want to just be loved, understood, respected, and treated with dignity. And I think when you realize that, that's when you find a bond with people you meet, no matter what sort of background or where they've come from or where you've come from.
Right. And I really hope that these students really contributed or can really feel the sentiment of celebrating otherness like you are. So speaking about your traveling in Vietnam, that is how many times you've been in Vietnam?
I've lost count. I think maybe not quite 10 yet, but somewhere close to that maybe.
Right. And how has, your journey coming back to Vietnam for so many times inspired you in your cookings?
Every time I come back, I try something new. Vietnam, I feel like, is a country that's evolving so quickly, and I get to go to new cities that I haven't been to before and try the new, to me, it's new, but the cuisines of that particular region. And so trying all these new ingredients, new dishes, it's always creative inspiration for a chef, especially someone like me who owns modern Vietnamese restaurants back at home, is to take, these new dishes I've tried, like, how can I change it a little bit but keep the essence of this dish and make it something interesting on the menu that people would enjoy trying.
Right. So can you compare the development of the cuisine scene in Vietnam compared to the Vietnamese cuisine scene in the US? Are they developing in a two different trajectory, or you feel like, with globalization, it's kind of becoming...
Oh, that's a good question. I think in some ways it's similar. I would say what I learned many trips ago back to Vietnam is trying dishes that I had never seen before, like, for example, bánh tráng nướng or bánh tráng trộn. Those things were not things that I could ever taste in the U.S. And what I learned is that the Vietnamese cooking that is in the U.S. was of my parents' generation, because it's my parents' generation that came from Vietnam to the U.S. So they brought with them the older, more traditional Vietnamese dishes. So then I would come here and try these new dishes of the younger generation, and then I'd be like, this is interesting. So now some of the chefs of my generation are bringing these new dishes back to the US so that other people can enjoy it and then try it. So I think in some ways it's evolving similarly, because now you're right, with globalization and with the prevalence of travel, like a lot more people are now able to travel between Vietnam and the US. You will find that similarity, and plus there's all these exports, imports of different products and ingredients, so it's easier now to get to a lot of Vietnamese ingredients in the US in different cities to be able to cook something that someone has eaten over here, and vice versa.
Bước Village Chiang Yên Commune, Vân Hồ District, Sơn La Province, is blessed with beautiful scenery and a crystal clear fish stream. This village is also where 12 hectares of organic agricultural land create sustainable livelihoods for the Thai and Hmong ethnic women. The village was also the venue for the Women in Entrepreneurship, Challenges and Opportunities in Vietnam and the United States conference, which Vietnamese-American MasterChef Christine Ha and local ethnic women attended.
Well, we asked Christine Ha to participate in this program because we think she's a very inspirational figure. She's a Vietnamese American. She's a disabled person who's made an amazing career for herself, and she's a female entrepreneur. So this is a chance for her to interact with some women from minority groups, and also to get outside of the city and to see a different culture, different food culture.
During the conference, the ethnic women gathered to share their stories of overcoming adversities when practicing organic agriculture and developing ecotourism, all aimed to attain sustainable livelihoods in Bud Village.
I invite all of you to ask any questions you like. I'm very open to answering anything. So,
Christine Ha also participated in a Q&A session and shared her MasterChef America journey during the third season of the hit show.
So I taught myself how to cook a lot of Vietnamese food really by memory, remembering how my mom's dishes looked or tasted. Right?
Yeah, wrapped pork belly.
Wrapped pork belly.
Also at the conference, Christine Ha staged a cookery demonstration and interacted with local people. She showed off her cooking skills using ingredients from Bud Village, such as village-raised pork, upland corn, and organic vegetables. Meanwhile, Bud Village women also prepared local dishes, such as grilled pork and sticky rice cakes, to share their culinary culture with MasterChef Christine Ha.
Tôi thì thấy rằng là rất là phục và cũng cảm thấy rằng là mình được truyền những cái năng lượng, cảm hứng, những năng lượng tích cực từ chị ấy.
Cái tinh thần mà chúng tôi học hỏi được nhiều nhất ở chị Hà đấy là tôi nghĩ rằng cái tinh thần lạc quan và cái sự kiên trì của chị ấy khi vượt qua những cái rào cản cá nhân của mình. Cái cơ hội rất là tốt cho chị em phụ nữ ở Vân Hồ Agritech để các chị em có thể có một cái cơ hội để chia sẻ hoặc là để khoe với cả mọi người về văn hóa ẩm thực của địa phương mình. Cũng là một cơ hội để chị em có thể học hỏi và có được những cái cách làm.
Once again, Christina fueled women with positive energy to overcome the challenges of faith and affirm their value on their life journey.
Your schedule every time you go back in Vietnam is packed, and so you just came back from Sơn La. And did you do anything? Do you have any special memories about that trip?
Well, it was going out to the countryside, which I'm from Houston, which is very urban. And we, usually when I come to Vietnam, I go to Ho Chi Minh City, which is very urban, and Hanoi is a city as well. So it was nice to get out to the countryside and smell, not hear so many motorbikes and smell the air and hear running water. And I was told there were chicken in the road and an ox on the road. So it's nice to see a different side of life in the countryside of Vietnam.
So you have spent a lot of time talking to people from ethnic minorities about their stories and their lives. So what sticks out to you through talking to them?
I think what sticks out is actually how similar we still are. I think, like I'd mentioned, they're women, they have families, they look to be financially independent, to have purpose in life. And even though I come from somewhere very, very different, in the essence of it is still the same. We desire the same things.
Right. How significant is Vietnamese cuisine in your life as a famous chef?
It's extremely significant. It's a lot of people know that that's my identity as a Vietnamese American chef. I love Vietnamese food. I love so many of the flavors, so many of the aspects of Vietnamese food, like how you can take humble ingredients and then make a dish that's really, really tasty that all people can enjoy. So for me, Vietnamese cuisine and Vietnamese food is so representative of me as my identity, as who I am, having both parents been born in Vietnam, so I'm of Vietnamese blood and heritage, and that's something I don't want to ever forget. Even though I was born in the U.S., it's very much a part of me and who I am.
How has your Vietnamese roots helped shape you as who you are today?
I think Vietnamese people are very resilient, and I think that shows through the way my parents live their lives and then what they've passed on, that trait they've passed on to me. So I think Vietnamese people are very admirable in that whatever they're given, they're in their lives, they're able to find a way to achieve purpose, to achieve happiness. And so I find that that is something that I feel I have in my life as well, is that sort of resilience.
Yeah, I feel like the word resilient describes your journey perfectly. And, you know, how much have you found yourself become more attached to Vietnamese culture, Vietnamese food every single day?
Now that both of my parents are deceased, I feel like the only grasp now I have on my background is like I don't get to hear stories from my parents and my grandparents anymore about what their life was like in Vietnam or what Vietnamese culture is like. So for me, visiting here and just being immersed in the culture and the country here and the foods here, that's really my only way to hang on and to stay attached to my background.
And I hope that your journey in Vietnam has helped you reignite those connections.
Yes, very much so. I'm excited to be here, and I've been here for a few days. Very excited to keep eating and trying new things in the cities here.
Right. And you have said before, I am the living proof that dreams come true. So what else do you want to say to our Talk Vietnam audience here today?
Those words still ring true. I think that oftentimes we get bogged down in the daily runnings of how life goes, but I think it's important to try to pause every day and think about the small things that bring you joy, whether it's taking a walk outdoors or petting your dog or hugging your family or eating a bite of really good food that you enjoy, or just small joys in life. I think it's important not to forget those things, because all of those things add up, and that's, I think, important for mental health and mental well-being.
After winning MasterChef, Christine Ha opened 3 U.S. restaurants, 2 specializing in Vietnamese cuisine. Her first restaurant in Houston, The Blind Goat, offers Vietnamese street food with a Texas twist. She launched her second restaurant, Xin Chào, in September 2020 with chef Tony Nguyen.
Exciting new project that we're actually launching together.
And it's called Xin Jiao.
And not too long after, the eatery was named as a finalist for the James Beard Award for Best Chef Texas Region in 2022. Christine's third restaurant, Stuffed Belly, opened in June 2023. She enjoys life by sharing her traveling and cooking experiences with her husband.
We do love cooking, and it's a big part of our lives. She definitely has a ton of passion in food. Even though she's blind, she doesn't let it get in the way of getting out there, trying new things, whether it's starting a business, writing a book, going to school, and getting her master's. She doesn't let her physical disabilities really hold her back. I think she has an incredible amount of tenacity.
Finally, do you have any things up and coming in your future plans? Maybe a residency here in Vietnam, cooking, opening a new restaurants maybe? Is it
Eventually I would love to live here part-time. I know my husband loves Vietnam. He wants to eventually retire part-time here.
Wow.
And in the future, I mean, Right now, it feels like we're just trying to keep our restaurants going, so working hard on the restaurants, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to grow the restaurants and open some more locations, especially for the smaller drive-through concept that's scalable. And then I'd like to write another cookbook and finish my memoir and perhaps finish the live documentary that's been going on about me as well, that's been filming on and off for the past few years. So, but other than that, I just, hope to continue to live happily and healthily and just excited to see what the next adventure may be. Don't know.
Right. Is there anything else you would like to share, about you yourself?
I mean, I think I'm just always happy to be here in Vietnam. I think people here are just very generous, very kind, very helpful. The life here just seems, people come from different backgrounds, but people just seem at ease and relaxed with where they are. And to me, even though I'm here for work, in some ways it's a nice respite from my life back at home. So I'm just happy to be here and happy that Vietnam's welcomed me.
All right. Thank you so much, Christine, for being on the show here today, sharing your story of you becoming a master chef and your journey of putting Vietnamese food on the international culinary map. And we hope that your journey in the future will be full of exciting moments.
Thank you for having me here today.
And that is all that we have for today's Talk Vietnam. Tuning in to our next episode for more even amazing guests.
Christine!